Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Sorry I haven't been, doing as many videos lately. I've just been busy with other stuff like procrastination. Yeah, it's just been a lot of procrastination, I'm sorry. So last night I went to see the Amazing Digital Circus, the last act. And, wow, it was certainly something. Now, before I get into this review, I'm going to give a fair warning that there are multitudes of spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen the Amazing Digital Circus episodes 8 or 9, I'd recommend clicking off of this video and watching something else, or better yet, watch episode 8 and then go to try to see the last act in theaters now, when you can, or wait until June 19th, when the final episode eventually comes to YouTube to actually watch it. With that said, let's actually get into the review. So before I actually get into the finale, I'm going to do a quick overview of episode 8. So obviously in episode 8, there's a lot of tension between the circus members and Kane. So, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. Kane feels like he's being treated poorly and that the circus members are being ungrateful and that he's the one who controls it. He's the one who's running the show. Shut up, it was a good joke. And essentially, he started acting like a child who thinks that he's God. I know a lot of people like to see Kane as this all-knowing god and villain, but I don't really see him that way. I see him as kind of, a child who doesn't really know any better, and he didn't really ask to be this way. He just wanted to try and satisfy people, but him not being able to satisfy people causes him to freak out. So obviously, during the whole part where he puts the circus members in their place, he goes on a rant about how he didn't want to be made and how humans are just too difficult. I find that part of the story actually very interesting because it does actually add a bit of a human aspect to what is an artificial intelligence. I think that him actually having actual feelings makes the story and the overall character of Kane more interesting. But then, again, spoilers ahead, after the freak out, Kinger accidentally deletes Kane in some chicanery that ends up having a coding glitch. So Kane gets deleted, and then a good chunk of the circus crumbles. Alright, we got a quick recap of episode 8. Now, let's actually get into episode 9, the finale, the last act. So before we get into the really big part of the episode, I want to talk about other stuff. First of all, I want to mention one glaring flaw, and it's also surrounded around Kane. So, might as well put the Kane arc in episode 8 and the Kane arc in episode 9 together as a way of, keeping everything consistent. So, Kane actually didn't get deleted. He was deleted, but he ended up in the void. It's kind of a way of saying yeah, he's in the trash bin, but you can recover folders. And he goes through a kind of redemption arc where he figures out the identities of every single circus member through being in the void and finding this internet browser thing where he adds all the names of the circus members, and he eventually, somehow in some way, comes back to the circus. I don't know how. That wasn't really explained, and if it wasn't really explained well, or maybe I'm just stupid, I don't know. But he ends up apologizing for being secretive, and while I do like Kane, and I think him having a redemption arc is sweet, I feel like he shouldn't have been the one to present the real identities of the circus members. I feel like that's probably the only flaw I have with the finale, is the fact that I feel like it was kind of easy having Kane figure it out instead of having the circus members figure it out, because In the finale, it's presented that they're already figuring out how the circus works and how they're able to fix it and manipulate it to make it better suited for them, because they're humans, they're smart, and now since Kane is deleted, they're trying to figure out a way how to control the world that they live in now, which I think is a good thing. So I felt like some way, somehow they should have gone into like the code of the circus or figured out a way to that search engine that Kane went to and figured out the true identities of themselves. Now, how would they figure it out? No clue, but I feel like it would have made it a much sweeter ending, and even then, you could still have Kane redeem himself while having the circus members figure out who they are on their own by letting them figure it out on their own, and then eventually coming back to them, apologizing for what he's done to this entire circus, and just trying to become a better person. Well, not person because he's an AI, but you know what I mean. I feel like it could have been a much sweeter ending. Here's the thing. A lot of people say that a lot of good endings in really dark shows are like cop-outs. And I feel like it should have had a darker ending or a bad ending or a bittersweet ending. I feel like the good ending actually works in favor because here's the thing. Most of the digital circus members already figured out who they are, and they've figured to accept who they are, and that they live in the circus now. There's not really a way out of the circus. That was made very clear in episode 1, and it's very clearly presented throughout the entire series that there is no escape from the circus. So I feel like having the good ending where they realize that, hey, we might be trapped inside, but at least we still have each other. And honestly, knowing that line from episode 7 and 8, it kind of stings in a matter of time, which I will get into later. But yeah, I feel like the good ending actually works in favor because they figured out who they are. I think that it's justified. That's basically it. I think it's just because they figured out who they are and it's justified, and also I feel like it's necessary for their characters. So throughout this video, I've neglected to mention a certain huge aspect / plot line / character of the show. And that's because I didn't want to break the tone of the video by going in chronological order. That's why I kind of went a little out of order. Like you could tell with the Kane plot lines and the fact that I immediately went to the ending before I started talking about this. The reason why I did this is because things are going to get a little heavy. If you are triggered by these topics, I'd recommend clicking off of this video and going to watch something else. If this is where you leave, then goodbye. I will see you next time. But without further ado, let's talk about Jax. So Jax, he's been kind of a split character between the fandom. A lot of people see him as just an irredeemable asshole and somebody who doesn't really deserve redemption, but others see him as a good guy deep down who just represses his emotions because he doesn't want to get hurt. And in this finale, the latter was correct. So I feel like it's time we explain Jax's backstory. He was a very troubled kid. He always was a very troubled kid. He barely got to see his father. His father seemed like he was disappointed in him. And after high school, well, the beginning of high school, he never really saw him again. So he lived with his emotionally abusive mother. Now, for the first part, it seemed like things were going fine, but then his mother started comparing Jax to his dad. And that's where things get a little heavy, because when Jax finally decides to open up to his mother, and tell him how he's been feeling, his mother laughs. He's laughed at. He gets basically emotionally abused by his own mother. She laughs at him, calls him names, makes fun of him. But like any abuser does, she tries to keep Jax under her finger by hugging him. But you can't do that to somebody who's been repressing his emotions for so long, because then Jax panics and pushes his mother to the ground, and she didn't get up. Now, it hasn't really been confirmed whether he actually ended up killing his mother, but I'm pretty sure we can make the assumption that he might have actually did it. So he ran and ran and ran and ended up homeless. And for a while, that's what we knew. Like, during episode 8, it was a little foreshadowed by some of the IRL footage, PTSD flashbacks that Jax was having in episode 7, actually, not episode 8, I'm sorry. But he felt like this was all his fault, which is where he ends up in the digital circus and where he meets Ribbit. Now, Ribbit considers Jax probably her closest friend. They had a great bond. They always had great banter, especially when him, Ribbit, and Kaufmo are together in a group and are just doing silly stuff together. They relate to each other a lot. They make each other laugh. It seemed overall like things were positive. And then there was that night where Jax finally tells Ribbit about what happened between him and his mother. Now, Ribbit takes it to heart and kindly gestures to Jax that she's always here when Jax needs him. But unfortunately, when Kaufmo knocks on the door, that tension is unfortunately broken, and that emotional vulnerability is broken in Jax. And he realizes that he does not want to get hurt again by another person he potentially loved. So he tells Ribbit that she must not share what happened between them that night. And unfortunately, that ended up making him emotionally distant towards Ribbit because he doesn't want to be seen as weak. And so him thinking that, him acting like distant towards Ribbit is for the betterment of him and Ribbit, because he does not want to be made fun of again for his insecurities, like what happened to his own mother. It's honestly really tragic that even though they had such a great bond, in the end, Jax is the cause for Ribbit's abstraction. Because after one too many times of feeling neglected, especially after the Snowy Mountain adventure, I forgot what the name of the actual adventure was, so I'm just calling it the Snowy Mountain adventure. Ribbit and Jax's fate, to an extent, were sealed. Ribbit abstracts, and Jax breaks inside, and he decides never to be emotionally vulnerable again. So he ends up just making jokes, trying to be the comic relief, but also being kind of an asshole, because it's his way of coping. And I heard a lot of people complaining that after episode 1, Jax became an irredeemable asshole, and that he doesn't deserve any screen time, and he's no longer a Tumblr sexy man. But we gotta remember, that was shortly after episode 1. The episode where Kaufmo abstracts one of the only other friends that Jax actually had. So, of course, even though he acted a little rude in episode 1 because he was coping with the loss of Ribbit, so he tried being, you know, an asshole to cover up his emotions, Kaufmo's abstraction is the straw that broke the camel's back and turned him into an irredeemable asshole. Or at least that's what it seemed like. But it's clear that he's not really an asshole deep down. He's not. He is a good person. But he is a broken person because he was hurt by the people he considered family. And I feel like that's the most tragic part. Jax could have worked. He could have worked things out, but unfortunately because of his past, he let the past consume him and let his insecurities just be bottled up and having his emotions just bottled up and choked out because he's worried that he'll be hurt again by his friends, by Ribbit and Kaufmo and Ragatha and Pomni. So he shuts himself out, and like I said, I feel like that's what sealed his fate, because from episode 1 I could tell that he was going to be the next one to abstract because of how he was and how close he was to Kaufmo and Ribbit. So seeing him actually abstract completely alone, well, it was an ending I expected. It wasn't the ending he deserved. I feel like he deserved better. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel with Jax, because in the end, he ends up fine abstracted, because, hey, his circus members, they're still with him because he can't be properly dropped into the void. So they create a nice little dark area for him to relax and to finally be at peace. And hey, at least his real life self is doing better. He was actually able to get a job. He moved in with his roommate. So happy endings all around. Yeah, I would say that's, well, it's not really much of a happy ending. It's probably the best ending that Jax was able to get with what he was handed with. And that's why I consider Jax to be the most tragic character of the show. Well, that was an emotional roller coaster right there. Yeah, I almost cried in the theater. If you enjoyed this video, I would recommend giving it a like, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, I would, subscribe. I'm trying to make the tone a little more lighthearted after, all that. But yeah, so I guess I'll see you guys whenever I post, which is probably in the next, 3 months. I'm sorry for the lack of a schedule. Goodbye. I forgot to give it a rating. Sorry about that. I give the episode 8 a 9 out of 10 and the finale an 8.5 out of 10. If Kane's redemption arc was done a little more my way, it would be like a 10 out of 10. Actually, no, not a 10 out of 10, a 9.5 out of 10. I don't give 10 out of 10s. Okay, now we can go. See you guys next time. Bye.